Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Training for a Communicator's Marathon. This webinar is presented by Episcopal Church Foundation in partnership with Episcopal Communicators. Episcopal Church Foundation is a lay-led and independent organization serving the Episcopal Church since 1949. ECF partners with communities of faith to engage in visioning and planning, develop leadership, and raise and manage resources for ministry. ECF's mission is to be a comprehensive and holistic resource that helps vitalize Episcopal faith communities. You can find more information at episcopalfoundation.org. Episcopal Communicators is a self-supporting organization of about 350 communication professionals working in congregations, dioceses, and agencies across the church since 1973. The mission of Episcopal Communicators is to foster community that inspires and supports excellence in church communications. More information is at episcopalcommunicators.org. I am Melody Warman, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Kansas and immediate past president of Episcopal Communicators. Our panelists this afternoon are Miriam McKinney, Development Director for Forward Movement, Sandra Montes, Interim Dean of Chapel at Union Theological Seminary and Spanish Language Resource Consultant at ECF, and Jeremy Tackett, Senior Manager for Creative Services in the Episcopal Church Office of Communications. And we're happy to note that Sandra has a book coming out today, Becoming Real and Thriving in Ministry, available through Church Pension Group and Amazon. And please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on ECF Vital Practices at ecfvp.org. And for those of you watching the webinar on Zoom, please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions as we go along. So first of all, how is everyone doing these days? Sandra, do you want to go first on that?
Sure. As you can imagine, I'm super excited about the book. So I'm very happy today. And this is kind of what my life looks like most days anyway. I am pretty introverted and I stay home. So and I get to be with my son and my puppy and my parents. So I've been doing well during this time. Thank you.
Jeremy?
Hey, everybody. What's it been? A week or two we've been in this now? At least a couple. It's great most of the time. I say one of the things that I really like about doing communications and this work in the church is I actually get to feel like we are doing something. As long as the days are and as stressful as they can be, it does feel good to actually be working towards something and helping get the word out there. But yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. Got married a couple weeks ago in the middle of coronavirus, which was fantastic and a bit crazy. But so there's a lot going on in the personal world. You'll probably see a kid or two make their way through the shot at some point because that's where we live. But yeah, it's been good.
Miriam?
Yeah, for me, I started the shelter-in-place concept on March the 13th when we had to cut our trip to Spain short. And so we've been here together, first 5 of us, and now then my one daughter, my oldest, went back to where she lives, which is with my dad. So that's nice that she's able to be with him. But frankly, I can't complain. I love my family and we pretty much love each other most of the time. We love each other all the time. We like each other most of the time. So it's really working out well. My middle daughter loves to cook and so we're well fed. They go to the store, which is really helpful for my husband and I who are a little bit more in the high risk category. And so we are able to stay at home as often as much as we can. And like Sandra, I'm introverted. I know people try to think I'm not, but truly I love being home. I'm a homebody, and so I can continue doing this for as long as it takes to make it right. So happy as a clam. I'm not saying there's no dark moments, because there are plenty, and there are tears, but I find that we have a great opportunity to count our blessings, and so I'm spending more time doing that.
I think that's so true. I personally am an extrovert, but I have had so much work to do that that I've been really grateful for the kind of the quantity right now, so that it keeps me really busy. As you say, I think as Jeremy said, that this is it's valuable work that's being done on behalf of the church right now, and I got to say, it's easier to be productive sometimes without as many distractions as an office. I miss the people in my office, but technology helps us stay connected as well. As we all had to kind of quickly move to working from home, I'm reminded of something that I read early on in that we actually are sheltering at home for safety's sake and also trying to work. Given that, in general, what does self-care look like for you these days? Miriam, why don't we'll go in reverse order there.
Okay. Well, for one thing, I'm sitting in a chair that has an ottoman, and I realized just as the call was about to start that I needed to pull the ottoman close to me and prop my feet up. So little things like that, just any opportunity I can take to do, go a little extra for myself. I try to do that. I think I've been remembering to take my vitamins every day, well, most every day, but that's more than usual. And my medication in general. I definitely have been doing some Facebook fasting days where I don't get on. I mean, I admit maybe like at midnight or 1 a.m. I'll get on, but I've been trying to just give myself a Sabbath from some of the ways in which I can become overwhelmed by the stuff that's going on. Of course, there's FOMO and things like that. So just trying to be more quiet and journal. I've definitely been, I just got a gift of a Sacred Ordinary Days planner, and I've been really using that. And I noticed that it helps me be more intentional with my time and to really pay attention and take care. It's something I was already working on, but to do it even more so now, to pay attention to each moment and to be as present as I can be in it. That to me is taking care of myself, because it's honoring my place in God's creation. And lip gloss.
Sandra, how about you? What do you do for self-care in days like this?
I spend a lot of time with my puppy, Chunky. I love looking at friends' babies' pictures and especially videos with them like babbling and being so cute. I love to text with friends, as Miriam knows, at all hours of the day and night. I love to spend time with my parents. I'm also coloring, and I write and sing and just, the creative things, and just laugh. I try to laugh a lot every day. And that's what I'm a naturally joyful person. So even when I'm upset, like Miriam said, I mean, there are definitely those dark moments and, when there's a lot of tears. And even then I just tell myself, oh my God, you're being so dramatic. And then I start laughing and, things like that. So those are kind of the things that I love to do, and drink a lot of Diet Coke, and always have my lipstick next to me for, just for meetings.
Jeremy, in your world, between work and a life situation change, what do you do for self-care?
Well, apparently I need to get lip gloss. I did not know that was that's the key. For me, I work either on the road or from a home office. So I don't have an office that I go to. So this is not a completely foreign concept, or at least that's what I thought initially. But doing it straight for 2 months has been tough. So one of the things that you all know, everybody that's on the panel and everybody that's watching as communicators, is it's not now, nor has it ever been, a 9-to-5 job. So a big part of my self-care has been trying, and if I'm honest, not succeeding a lot of days at segmenting my day and having time that I do work, time that I step away from it. We also did the coronavirus thing and got a puppy. So there's a dog too, which sort of forces me to go outside and do walks every day, which is a fantastic practice. But I have learned that when I'm in the same space all day and I'm working from here and I'm eating meals here and we're doing homeschooling from here and being a family here, segmenting the house has been a huge piece of self-care. There's a desk and there's a room that I do work in. The laptop doesn't go in the bedroom with me, and I try to even keep it out of the living room as much as I can, so that there's sort of some bit of trigger that says, all right, we're done with that now. It's time to go be off for a bit. So when I'm at my best, that's it. I've eaten a lot better than I do on the road. It's much easier to eat healthy foods when you're having to make out meal plans because you can't go to the grocery store every day. So that's good. But at the same time, I do miss being out in the world. I don't have that introverted thing. So I like to be out, but finding ways to stay connected with friends and coworkers digitally has been a huge bit of that as well.
Melody, I just would like to add, because I don't know how I forgot this. One big thing, and if you know me, because I'm very public about this on Facebook, that I've been doing for myself for the last 4 or 5 years now, is walking and running outdoors, no matter what the weather. I guess I should say, unless it's a thunderstorm, but even in the snow. And a lot of my favorite places that I love to walk are closed, and even the ones that aren't, those are packed, or you just don't know. So I really have been missing out, and I could tell a difference in my whole being of not walking outside. And I have a treadmill, and that's a blessing, but it's not the same. So I started just going and sitting in the car for at least an hour a day. I have this new car and I got nowhere to go. So I just started sitting in the car, and I feel much better. Just looking at all my backyard animals and stuff, and just being outside in the fresh air and looking at the gorgeous sky, which is so much bluer, it seems. So that has been a huge piece of my self-care.
That's a great idea. That's one I don't think I've heard anybody use, but especially when you have a lot of family around, sometimes it's hard to find, even if you've got a designated workspace, where is the space that belongs just to you? Use our car. That's a great idea. My self-care mostly these days looks like at the end of the day, I decompress with too many episodes of Property Brothers and things like that. My lottery dream house, but it's sort of helpful. We all work for wonderful organizations, and no matter how much you enjoy your work, and no matter how great your office, your employer is, we all know that the needs of the communications ministry can expand to fill time that does not fit into a normal workday. And we've talked about this a little bit, but what parts of your job can end up doing that, and how do you combat that in particular? And Jeremy, I think it sounds like that's a particular professional thing that you would have to be working against.
Yeah, that's true for a couple of reasons. One is new and coronavirus related, in that the information changes every day. The tools that we use change every hour to every day. The other one is that we work with a lot of time zones anyway, so it's very normal for us to, it's dinner time here, but it's 3 p.m. in California, so that's still work days. So there's always been some bit of having to make the conscious decision to say, I'm gonna pause on this. It did actually get to the point about 3 weeks into quarantine that I had gone out of the house on a Sunday and came back, and I had a missed FaceTime call from the presiding bishop, and that always before you would have jumped. And I texted him and I was like, can I just, after I take a nap, is this urgent? Can it wait? But I think it's just part of that. It's realizing that what's done is done. What's undone is undone. Let it be. And this is important work. That's absolutely true. It is also such a huge pandemic and undertaking that we are not going to make or break the entire system by having dinner with our family or by sleeping in one Sunday morning, even a Tuesday morning, but on the weekends, having that time, getting outside. But it's balancing that with really being honest about the energy that comes, because a lot of us are in this because we don't want a 9-to-5 job. We love having our hands in it. We love getting to do it. And so having that inner narrative for myself to say, yeah, tonight it's going to be an 8 o'clock night. I'm going to find time to make up for that. I'm going to find those blocks in my calendar that are non-negotiable. There's going to be family time. There's going to be time outside and play time with the kids. And the work can wait. That's biblical. That's at the end of the day, we're doing godly work, and God says to rest. So if we're going to fully do it, then taking time off is as important as doing the work. And if my wife were listening to me say that, she'd be like, that's a very good mantra that you don't really follow, but it sounds good. And I do believe it, whether or not I actually achieve it or not.
Miriam, how about for you?
Yeah, I would say Jeremy keeps saying it, and isn't that the thing of like you tell yourself the thing you want to believe, you dress for the job you want, whatever. Keep telling yourself that, and one day you'll live into it. Yeah, I completely agree. Frankly, I'm a person who I do my best work when everybody is in the bed. So like 11 to 1 is my prime writing time, and I'm talking PM to 1 a.m. even to my creative hours happen when it's dark. And so I have loved and thrived on jobs where I can set my own hours, work from home. I've always, at Forward Movement, I've always had a pretty sizable component of that, which is working from home. And then I'm also a youth minister, and except for Sundays, that is also work from home. I'm the youth minister at Calvary Episcopal Church here in Cincinnati. So I love the ability to adjust my hours to my kids' schedule, and also to when I'm the most productive. But taking a page out of the Auntie Maxine Waters book of reclaiming my time, you have to reclaim your time. You must keep track, even if it's, whatever, like you're guessing, but assume that you have given it your best shot. I mean, Jesus would take off from those disciples and go take a rest and pray and restore himself. I mean, I can only imagine, right? So I feel like that's what God wants of us, and that's what God commands of us. And that commandment is a command. I write about this a lot, about rest. We break that commandment proudly in this, particularly as United States. This is our culture here, is that we thrive on being busy, and you're important when you're busy. You have a life when you're busy. I don't claim that. I've put that to the side for the last several years. It's why I went to Forward Movement and left my career as a librarian, because if I wanted to be doing that, I'd be at the library. So I feel blessed to have been guided to this by God, and to be working in organizations that allow for that. But then we also have to be good stewards of this life that God has given us. And really, like Jeremy said, and Scott Gunn, my boss, says this a lot too, is that there is nothing that you are doing that is more important than taking care of yourself.
That's great. And Sandra, how do you help to push against the forces that try to expand your day beyond what you can do?
I've been a consultant for many years. So for me, I always joke about, I don't have a Monday and I don't have a Friday. And with a wonderful child, I became a single parent when he was young. So, and he's a very creative person. So I had to really learn how to manage my time and schedule my time and prioritize. And then when I was going to school, etc. So I'm pretty good at that. So now, for example, if I know that something is due, then I prioritize. I always ask when people ask me to write or do things, I'll say, when is this really due? So then I can prioritize. And then, like, let's say I want to, kick it with one of my friends, and I know that I may not be able to write or do anything for 4 hours, then I know that I'll be up from 1 to 4 in the morning finishing up this other job. And those are choices that I make. So for me, I have been very good about scheduling my own time and not feeling like I'm being bombarded. Now, when I do get people who, because of their lack of time management, they're trying to make my job, happen right now, then I often do not answer the emails quickly so that they realize that, I'm not on your timeline. And so anyway, so that's what I try to do to combat that feeling of, like Miriam was saying, I try not to feel like, oh my God, I'm busy, so I must be successful. But it's just how to, what is the work that's being done and put out, including my own personal things. Like right now, I'm making a video of women of color in ministry. And so for me, that's important. And so I'm making time for that and putting some other things, on like the side that I know that are due later. But that's my time. So that's kind of how I claim my time, just doing stuff that I also love and enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. I think setting priorities for me has been paramount. Sometimes the priorities are set for us. I also find for me that if I can write it all down, I'm a big list maker. And so it allows me to see what I'm tackling. And then it also has the byproduct of sometimes, if I'm lucky, getting it out of my brain. So I don't have to think about thinking about it. You can it's just there. And I really like the idea of sometimes emails can just sit. I think that's a great, that's a great one. This webinar is called Training for a Communicators Marathon. And as some of you know, I recently trained for an actual marathon, and it is hard and often boring. And that's before you ever even get to the starting line. And what practices do each of you use that help you push through tough days in a way that keeps you sane? Sandra, do you want to start on that one?
Sure. One of the things that I'm working on with this book is a launch for it. Because of the pandemic, the dates are all kind of messy. But so I know that I need to reach certain people to ask if they would be part of this launch team for me. And yesterday, I remember I was like paralyzed and I was like, okay, who do I ask? How do I do it? So I told myself, all right, go outside and think of 2 people and write at least 1 email. And so I did. And for me, that, and it's been days. Miriam knows this because, she was one of my soundboards. And so it was very difficult. And it's something that I did not want to do because I don't know how to do it. I've never done this before. It feels very strange and awkward to ask people to, promote you, because I don't do that very well. I love to promote others, but I don't do that very well for myself. So for me, it was a very daunting, difficult thing to do. And so I just told myself, all right, you get to go outside, do that, and then you come back in and, continue with the video. So, and I've been doing that for the past few days. And, so just give myself some mental permission also to not do 20, but to do 2 at a time. And that has helped me.
Jeremy, what about you? What when you
Eh,
when you have to push?
Sure. So we have seen a lot of our big, fun, creative ventures come to a screeching halt, whether that's a concert project we've been working on or a video series that lets us go all over the world and tell stories. Now all of that has become iPhone videos done from the same office at the same place in Raleigh. And then there's the same editing that happens, 20 times a week. So the first step is realizing that that's part of at least the temporary normal is to adjust the expectations. But the other thing that I've done is try to be intentional about finding some long-term creative thing that I can spend a portion of my time on, specifically something work related. I've got plenty of fun things that I do on my own just as hobbies, but in my work, finding something that I can look down the road. I've been really specific to not put something with a calendar date on it because I don't want this to be another thing that's a pressure or a failure, but carving some space out of the day to be creative, get my team engaged. I've tried to be intentional about the things I know they love in their work and involve them in not necessarily another thing to do, but where can they dream? And so that when we come out the other side of this thing, we've got something that where you've got energy and that we're moving toward, and something specifically that doesn't stop when coronavirus quarantines are lifted. We don't want to spend all of our energy and time on creating all new things that in a month don't have relevance or aren't life-giving, and then they become another thing to do. But what's something that we can be creative, realizing that you still have the work to get done. That's not going to change. This is not fun. It's not what we want to do. It's not what we signed up for. Just name that, and then looking beyond that to realize that it's not forever, and there are still ways, even if they're very different, for us to get creative and remember the parts of this that we love to do.
And Miriam, I know that since you and I have followed each other's training schedules at times, that you are very intentional about keeping to those when you can. I see you out walking in the rain, and it's like, oh, I'd wait till it wasn't raining. So I know that there's that aspect of your life that you are very intentional about. But are there other things that you have to push through, the boring parts that you can in the non-physical activity realm?
Yeah, well, you named it correctly. The training, I haven't trained for a marathon. The biggest race that I've done is a 15K, but it does get boring. I mean, that's just a real thing. And so I think I use the same kinds of, I guess, sort of appeal gifts to myself for that, and also for other kinds of work that can get a little boring. I mean, being a development director, I deal with a lot of numbers and those kinds of things. That's not my strength. I'm a thinker, I'm a creator, I'm an idea person. That's like my least favorite thing, but it's also super important. So music is a big piece that I bring to a lot of things, training, for a race, but also in my work. I mean, I find if I feel like I just really can't do it, I just put on my favorite playlist, and I've got several, so I know what I need for the kind of thing that I'm doing. So, if you're like me, I mean, you probably have lots and lots of favorite songs, but you know what you need when you are really at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
One for me is, it's a Christmas album, but to me, there's no wrong time to tell the Christmas story, and it's Handel Messiah, A Soulful Celebration. That CD or that music has brought me through many a dark hour. Also, just sort of when it's hard to do the work because you're sad or you're depressed. I mean, that's definitely a moment too where music helps me a lot. Outdoors, I've talked about that, like just taking my computer and driving someplace beautiful and parking and working there. Of course, now that place is closed, so it's like
But it won't be, it won't always be closed.
It won't
but,
always be closed. It won't
but it
always
is
be
now.
closed. You're right.
Yeah.
But also chunking, and someone mentioned that in the chat of time. Like for me, if I break it down into manageable pieces, or I'll say like I reward myself. If I work on this and I finish to this piece, then I'm going to do X. If I then get to Y, then I'm going to do this. So breaking it up into smaller pieces helps me as well.
For me, in my literal training, it also helped me that I had people who were helping to keep me accountable. There were a lot of days that I would have maybe skipped it, but my son and his wife, who they've done Ironman, so they know about this. And so they'd text me on a Saturday morning, is this the day of your long walk today, this weekend? And how many miles are you doing? And it's like, I can't slide. So sometimes it helps to let other people know what you're doing, and then they just help you be a little bit accountable as well. At least it helped in that regard. And sometimes it also helps them to share your burden. It's like, I know this is hard right now, and I know that this is what you're working on. So it's not just accountability, but also it's also support. Somebody, you had mentioned, I think, Miriam, doing a Facebook fast, as it were. We all are called on as communicators. Almost all of us have responsibility for social media for our work, and then we also have it as part of our just life. And how do you each draw a line between those, or do you? And if what is helpful to you in that regard? And Sandra, I'll start with you.
Sure. Years ago, I started giving up social media for Lent, and it just really taught me a lot. My first Lent social media fast. And from there, I have learned certain things. During this pandemic, social media has been very important for my job at Union Theological Seminary. And, we were doing chapel every day, Monday through Friday. And so that was very important. So what I do is I will, try to just schedule my time that I want to post something or be on there, and then for work, and then for my personal entertainment. If there's not no other word, I don't know how to call it, because most of my posts, if you'll follow me, are not very entertaining, but they're more about truth telling and all that stuff. But so that's one of the things that I try to just really keep a balance. And when I notice that I'm being a little, especially now with having to be online a lot, when I feel that I'm getting very negative or feel like a headache or something, then I know that I need to turn that off. So that's what I try to do. And the fasts that I've taken from social media, and by the way, I don't announce them, so because I think that's kind of, I don't like that, to announce them, like, I'm getting off Facebook, and then like 2 days later I'm like, okay, I thought you were going to be off Facebook, what happened? But no, anyway, but I don't announce them, I just do them. And but yeah, so those have helped me to just see, like, why do I want to post this? Why do I really want to see this? I unfollow a lot of people. I don't block many people, but I do unfollow some for, how that thing is for 30 days, or I mute a lot of things because that's just for my own sanity. And so, yeah, those are the things that I think I do so that, I can just kind of keep balance.
Jeremy, how about you?
I don't do it well. This is one of the areas where I do live on it, mostly for work. I'm on it on one of the many pages that we run, or different channels. But Sandra had a great point. The unfollow button is very helpful, and don't read the comments. Just go through it. I decided a long time ago that most of it is, no matter what I'm posting or where I'm posting it, I for good or bad, represent a bigger thing. So I try to avoid the comment sections and jumping in. I don't always do it well. I am not without a post that is solely for my entertainment or for fun, knowing that I'm going to poke things with sticks. I do that. But I do find that I am much more of just a consumer of it rather than a participant in it these days. And I don't know if that's anything related to coronavirus or just a healthier behavior overall. But I don't spend a ton of time, especially on Facebook. I'm pretty Twitter addicted just as in watching it, but again, not so much diving into the conversations because I do get very emotional and into it, and it's just not a good use of energy when there's not enough energy anyway. So yeah, just being observant of that, conscious of that, and saying, you know what, maybe it's time to put this down and just go to sleep or go outside.
Miriam?
Yeah, I find that, well, first of all, I'll just say, I've got teenagers and adult children. So if I want to know what's going on with them, I have to get on Instagram and or Snapchat, which I'm only friends with them on Snapchat. So there's that. On Instagram, I don't get over there too often because Facebook is so time consuming with work stuff. I then don't have the energy to really deal with much more. So I don't know. I guess and Twitter, I just can't even handle Twitter. I can't handle it. I only get on Twitter, honestly, it's full disclosure, and I'm outing myself as a fan of this music group. I only get on there for BTS. And I just happen to follow Scott Gunn and some churchy stuff. So it's this weird mix of this Korean boy band and Episcopal church. So that keeps me off of it. Trust me. So, but Facebook is definitely where I spend a lot of time. And I have a lot of I love Facebook because I'm connected to a lot of people. My high school is this weird high school where so many of us are still in touch and friends. And even I have elementary school friends. So I love keeping in touch with them until I have to block them or unfollow them and mute them and stuff. And then there's the church stuff. So what I try to do is, like yesterday, I just took a total fast for the whole day. And I don't schedule that as much as I should. I should just like schedule it. Yeah, I just didn't feel like it yesterday, so I didn't do it. But usually what I do is limit my time that I'm in Forma and the communicators groups. And, so like I just have to sort of say to myself, okay, if a message shows up and it's Forma related, don't look at it. If I'm just in there for my own enjoyment. But I shouldn't say it's impossible, but it's extremely difficult to do that. I haven't found a successful way to do it yet, but I'm trying. And there's this prayer that I learned at my Listening Hearts training that says, God, we don't always get it right, but God loves that we try. And so I just feel like if I keep trying, I'll hit at some measure of success, but I don't hate it. So that's the thing. Facebook brings me a lot of enjoyment, and then I get mad, so then I know I have emotions. So there's that.
You can also, I'm sorry, you can also unfollow groups and you can always follow them back. So it's like, that's what I do a lot of times too. When it's too much, I'm like, you know what, I can't handle all this. And then sometimes I forget, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I haven't heard from this group. And it's like, oh, this is why.
Well, the Forma group, Episcopal Communicator group is great. And it's straightforward most of the time. You get a laugh every now and again. But for my youth group stuff, and even also it informs some of the stuff I do for Forward Movement as far as being a partner with Forma and with like organizations, it is so rich with content. And I'm so grateful for all of the gifts that Forma has given me, particularly now when there's only so many games you can play on Zoom with your youth group, and somebody comes up with another one, and I'm always like, thank God. Thank God for you. So it's been a blessing mostly.
I have to say that in these days, one of the things that has been such a lovely surprise for me on social media, it may also be existing on Facebook, I've seen it more on Twitter and Instagram, are the number of people, many of them, either celebrities or political people or artists of one kind or another, that are putting their work out on social media. That concerts and I follow this one principal dancer from the New York City Ballet, and she's doing a ballet class every day on Instagram Live. I mean, one of the premier dancers in one of the finest ballet companies, and she's in her mother's kitchen, and she's using the counter as the bar. And I don't do it, but I watch. And so it has things like that. The Broadway actor Josh Gad, who is reading children's books, and Andrew Lloyd Webber on Twitter, who has had sing-alongs with some of his musicals. I mean, it's just been, that aspect of this has been really great. And one person, I actually took a screenshot one time of a tweet from a guy I follow, and it was like, leave the trolls alone, let hate sit alone. And so I pull that out every now and then when I need to remember that. We have a question that came in that says, how have you been able to express this lack of boundaries between your personal space and workspace to others? Or is there a way that you delineate that? Has anybody had any success with that?
I don't know if you'd call it successful, but it usually gets delineated to me when I cross a line or post something that's a little too political or too something. I hear about it, and so I'm pretty quick to say, all right, maybe I didn't need to do that. Delete it without arguing about it much, and just back off from it. It's sort of one of those. I hold it all out here, and if it got knocked out of my hand, then let it go. Don't stick with it. But for the most part, I'm trying to just be conscious of, no matter how I delineate that line, I've got to make that decision for myself. But there are always going to be folks, especially those of us who are in digital roles for our organizations. We're always going to be identified with that organization. And so I can say, no, this is just my post. This isn't the presiding bishop's post, but there is some point where if somebody wants to make the connection, they're going to do it. So I just have to be conscious of that. And I can, try to say, no, this was me. This wasn't me. Sometimes that works, but it's better to just operate as if you're always speaking for that other group. And again, this is one of those places where those of you that are my friends on Facebook realize that this is an ideal that I'm speaking, not something that I always practice. But if I were answering this question, that's the correct answer to it from my perspective.
I know for me, this issue comes up more with email than it does with social media, but I know Allie asked this question, and her job is specifically like digital missioner. I think that's her title.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see, and I used to do social media for Forward Movement, and it's been a few years. And when I was doing that, it was much harder because people, an organization like Forward Movement with Forward Day by Day, when someone asks a question, they expect an answer immediately. And, I'm like, look, it's 5:30 p.m. I'm with my kids. I'm not answering your question. So I didn't have any problem with the organization understanding that. It was with our customers understanding that. And now what we have set up is a message, one of those automatic messages people get as soon as they send a message on our Forward Day by Day, or I think on any of our social media pages. They receive a message saying, thank you for contacting us. Someone will be back with you within X amount of hours. It might be 24. So it's setting the expectation for people that, we're human beings. Facebook isn't going to answer you. A person is going to answer you. Just like when they call us or send us an email. I do think that the immediacy of social media makes people feel as though they have access to you all the time, but they don't. And I don't know if people are getting sort of some backlash from their superiors or other coworkers, but I dare anyone to do a job for 24 hours a day. They're not going to do it, and neither should you.
We've had a question come in from Kim any strategies to get people to adhere to deadlines, which she finds, or Kim finds, is the cause of the endless workday. Does anybody have that magic pill that they've discovered, or I can just say for me that I'm pretty lucky. I mean, I'm also very persistent, and if I need something by a deadline, I know some people who I need to tell them it's a week ahead. You kind of, like the people who are perennially late, that you tell them the party starts an hour earlier. So, or I'll just like the persistent widow before the judge, I will go back and back and back, and sometimes they just finally get me what I need to shut me up. But I figure if that was Jesus' example, then it's not a bad one to follow. But does anyone else have any particularly helpful tips on that?
I wanted to jump at this one really quickly. I read Kim's question. I was like, but I didn't want to go first twice. I want to give you some permission here. And this is going to be a hard piece of advice, but it's a valuable one. Let them miss a deadline and go ahead and do the thing without their piece. Now, I know, number one, that's not always possible because of who's missing the deadline. One of the things about being a communicator is you're not always at the top of the food chain. You're usually not. If the presiding bishop says, I'm not going to get you a video until Wednesday, I'm going to run it on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. But there is also room for conversation here with those that are above you, that are in the chain of command. And we have had to do a ton of this culture work at the Episcopal Church at 815 to say, we are going to create a culture that says our time is valuable and our deadlines are as professional as those above us, and we don't exist entirely to get it whenever you get it to us. And so we are allowed to expect support from those above us. And there are always exceptions, but they are few and far between if we're honest about it. Today's exception becomes tomorrow's expectation. We say, you let it go once and then, well, they did it last time, they'll do it again. It is okay. And you should be able to expect that your job and your time are important too. And when you say, this is the deadline because I want to have dinner with my family and I want to have a weekend, it's okay for you to stick to that. And that's really the only way we've found. Be firm when you have to, be flexible when you can. And it's not going to be the end of the world, and folks are going to find that out. And there will be repeat offenders, but there will also be those people that didn't get their announcement in the weekly email that will the next time. And so that's not the fun advice, and it's not the easy, but it's the brave advice, I think, to still little Brene. And it works. I give you permission.
There you go, folks. Permission from Jeremy Tackett. In the parenting circles, that's called logical consequences. You do it, or this happens, and then they do it or don't do it, and this happens. And but again, you have to. There is an element of discretion about that. But thank you for that, Jeremy. We all needed to really hear that. That what we do is ministry, and it is just as valuable as any ministry in the church. It is different from the ministry that others do, but it is not less valuable. It is different, but it is not less. And I also can say that in the last 10 weeks, I think the church has seen the value of communications and the work of communicators in a way that maybe corporately is new, in ways that maybe had not been so clear before. But when you've got folks going from 0 to 100 on Sunday live streams in a week, that is formidable and visible. And so I hope that, yes, use that and be bold in stating it. Um, in our
Melanie,
last,
can
of
I just
course,
wanted to add one small piece to that because I 100% agree with everything Jeremy said. And I'm just going to also name something that I don't want to be unnamed, and that is all of us who are baptized Christians are ordained by virtue of our baptismal covenant. And one thing I think that happens is that people who are ordained feel like um, they have a little bit more power than those of us who aren't. Or on the flip side, those of us who aren't give people who are ordained more power than they maybe deserve or need. And I would say, bump all of that. We're all here serving the Lord. We're all here doing God's work. We're all here trying to help people follow Jesus. And if people don't get the good news about that, then they're missing out. So we are, just as you said, Melody, we're needed. We're important. And we should not, there should never be a time when holy orders comes into play as some sort of a like situation to make people feel that they are more or less important than anyone else. We are all in these trenches doing this work, and especially right now, it doesn't serve anyone for that to come into play. I'm on commission on ministry, and so in my diocese, and that's where I've had the benefit of discerning all of that and coming to understand my baptismal covenant and what it means to be a lay person, fully empowered to do the work of preaching the good news in the kingdom.
I just say amen. I think we've got time for one final question. And this, I hate to leave it for the end, but I believe that this is important. Just we do work for the church in part because we love it. We love the work and we love the church. But working for the church is no guarantee of a healthy spiritual life. It doesn't just rub off by osmosis. So what do you do to keep your spiritual life healthy? Sandra, do you want to start on that?
Sure. I grew up evangelical, so the foundation for reading the Bible and praying and doing Bible study and devotionals has been very much ingrained in me. So that's what I continue to do, just read the Bible, talk to others about Jesus. I'm not afraid or ashamed of talking about Jesus to anyone, including people who don't share my same beliefs. And just as I also listen to them, I try, my time praying is literally all day. When I was 16, somebody taught me to just pray all day long. I don't have to be in a certain corner or, say certain prayers. I love to read different things, different spiritual things. And just speaking with my family, about, and friends and close friends about Jesus and about God and about faith. I doubt a lot of things. Again, those of you who know me know that I question the Episcopal Church a lot, and that in itself brings me a lot of just food for thought in my whole spiritual life. And as an Indigenous person and as a Latina, I'm very much about spirituality and about seeing spirit and creator and God everywhere and everything. So yeah, so it's just kind of like an ongoing thing that I don't like pause and say, okay, now it's spiritual time or now it's, learning time. And it's just all day long is that for me.
Jeremy, how about you?
For me, it's being very intentional about making the church parts and places that I work for separate from the places that I find my personal growth. I like to lend my skills where I can to the church that I attend. If there's something I can help out with or a question I can answer, and especially so now that we're in these new times where very specialized knowledge in this area helps. And so I see that as a bit of a reason to be there, but generally I'm not my church's web guy. I'm not the one that does the bulletins. I don't take care of the podcast and getting the sermons out every week. For even my wife, who is a priest, I do some of that work, but finding a place in a community where I can just be there and part of the congregation and being fed, that for me, it has to be separated. I know a number of communicators that work at a church and attend a different church. And there was a time when I thought, that's crazy, that's just twice as much. But I've come to really find that keeping those boundaries and keeping those separate things in separate worlds has been really helpful for me as well. But it is hard when you see behind the curtain sometimes to find it to be spiritually fulfilling in ways that lots of folks do. Because you're like, no, I know the conversation that happened not from behind the pulpit. It gets messier. But in the end, I absolutely think it's worth it. And it's an incredible way to make a living and to have a real career in life.
Excuse me, Miriam?
I have to say that for me, working for the church has definitely blessed me with more of a spiritual life than what I had before. As I mentioned earlier, I went straight from college to grad school, and I was a librarian for over 20 years. And that is what I really feel God called me to do and to be. And that's where I feel like my most authentic and real true self, when I'm hanging around some books and there's some people and there's especially kids. So, but I was definitely searching for a more quality of life, like overall. And working at Forward Movement has given me the tools to go deeper into my spiritual life. My dad's of that generation, and my parents were both very active in their church. My dad was a priest, but they didn't really talk to us about that stuff. They just did stuff and they expected that we would figure it out. And that is just not how it works. At least it didn't work like that for me and my brother. So being able to learn about spiritual practices and figure out where the holes were in my spiritual life, and then getting more involved in my diocese, definitely being, at my church, I don't do any type of communications work anymore. I did for a little while, but not anymore. And so I get to just participate. Now I'm on staff as a youth minister, which is a huge blessing and helps me to go even deeper, particularly with the way of love practices, spiritual practices, particularly for me, more scripture reading, personal scripture reading, and more prayer, going deeper in my prayer life. So I feel fortunate that is how God has called me and led my path to date.
Yeah, I think at the service that I attend, I suspect that the vast majority of people there don't know what my work is. I mean, they know me, but I'm not sure I'm not sure that they put the two pieces together, and I'm fine with that. It also during these Corona days, it's been interesting to kind of sometimes I just need to worship someplace different, because when you're so deep into the work of the people you normally worship with or work with, it's just kind of nice to go watch somebody's online service that you're never going to see again. Not only a different religious experience, but also it's like you really get to go and be anonymous. I mean, online you can sort of be anonymous, poking in on people's YouTube channels, but it's just been kind of like the proverbial going out of town, so that you can just kind of slide in. That's been kind of an interesting phenomenon for me. So our hour is just about up. It went so quickly. Do any of you have, Sandra or Jeremy or Miriam, have any last thoughts about how to help people in this ministry? I'll go first. I do just really want to encourage, what I said before about the church coming to understand the value of communications, this ministry that we share, is, I think it is a unique time in that that what we have done quietly and behind the scenes has now taken center stage, and I pray that that continues. That kind of level of respect and support continues even when it's maybe back in the wings and not on center stage, as it has been in the last couple of months. The work is always hard and is really critical. And so I just want to applaud communicators everywhere for the grace, and just for the grace that has been exhibited in figuring out things that are new and hard, and you just had to get it done. And you know, Zoom goes wacky, and so you know, you're figuring out the workarounds. And you know, in my diocese, I've got a photo of a guy who, you know, had to duct tape his iPhone to a tripod so he could, you know, get some video. And you know, you just everybody who's just working really, really hard to do the work to benefit the church and to praise God. And so I want to just say thank you to everyone. And so anything else from our panelists?
The only other thing I would say is what I like to end any of these that I get to do is just by encouraging you all that you're doing enough and you're doing it well. And your work is incredible. And if no one else in the world sees it, and I don't believe that because your work touches so many people, but we see it and we appreciate it. And you took an hour out of your day in the middle of it to take care of yourself a bit. And I hope that you got something from that. And we're available. We're all a community. We're here to help. If there's something we can do or a question we can answer, we'd love to do that. But you're awesome. You rock. And keep doing what you're doing. And rest more. And wash your hands.
I would just add, putting God first helps a lot to keep things in perspective. And then aside from that, make yourself number one in your own life.
And I just want to thank you all, every single one of you, for doing, especially those of you who are working outside of the box, of your box, not the box, but your box, where you've never done this before and it seems scary. You did it and you're doing it. Even if it doesn't show up on Facebook Live, even if the, you know, Zoom's not working, you're doing it. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. As a very criticona person who criticizes the church a lot, I just want you to know that I love what you're doing and what you're putting out there. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you all for being part of this. A special thank you to Episcopal Church Foundation for sponsoring this webinar. And so do go check out their website. Where are we? Episcopalfoundation.org. If you want to find out more about the organization of Episcopal Communicators, it's episcopalcommunicators.org. And thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Take care, all. Bye-bye.